Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Money in the Law here at MyFM 101.3. I'm one of your hosts, John Drohan, joined by my other host, an esteemed colleague and dear friend who came to my birthday party, Jay Marsden.
I was just about to say one of your hosts is older this time around.
That's right.
You've broken through the tape on this one, haven't you? Yes, right. You have.
Well, I've always seemed and acted and looked older than you. I'll admit that. But
absolutely.
Now I feel. I feel older because by the calendar, I am older.
You know, whenever I bump into people and they ask about the show, they always say to me now, John, he's the more mature one. I mean, that's how they clearly describe.
That's how they say it.
They definitely. You're the immature one. You're the juvenile individual. John is kind of like the White House. John is the adult in the room. That's exactly what he's there for.
Oh, by the way, for those of you watching on Holliston TV,
come on.
This is Ray is here. Ray is just leaving the studio, but you're on TV, pal. I can't hide it.
He's going upstairs.
I'm famous, Ma.
Famous Ma. We're on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine.
This is not my birthday. No, this isn't my birthday. But it's funny because my birthday was one day away from when the MyFM 101.3 birthday, which is having their 1-year birthday on the 12th of their launch to FM.
That's the theme. That's the birthday theme today. That's also
It's the other
happy birthday shout out we have to give to MyFM 101.3, our FM footprint here at WMRC, dailynews.com, where you can listen to all the shows and Money in the Law, as well as all the other shows from all the other radio personalities that grace the airwaves over here.
And the other thing you can listen to, not only you can listen to that, but remember you can listen to all the great sports, right? They got the Patriots,
yes.
They got the Red Sox. You can also listen to some music that you otherwise won't hear anywhere else on the radio.
Correct, absolutely. The only place on earth that you'll hear this music here.
Right. So on the way in, it wasn't on the way in, but recently, so we were just talking about this before we went on the air, I heard the one and only Manfred Mann and the Earth Band, Blinded by the Light.
And while we're here, Ray actually went old school on us and played the Bruce Springsteen.
But listen, so that was the conversation. That was the conversation. So I said, so Ray, who you just saw, the guys you just saw on TV, Ray is a musical connoisseur. Ray's he's our music guy.
Let me tell you what Ray is. Ray is a living, breathing, walking jukebox.
He is. He's a rock and roller. He's a DJ. Right. He's a DJ by trade, but he's also a singer by trade as well. He's a real rock and roller.
He's the personification of music. Some have said. I've heard it said. Personification.
So here you go. So as I came in and I said, hey, what about, I just heard Manfred Mann and the Earth Band, I heard Blinded by Light. I'm like, can you believe that I think they're the first band ever, take a song and then totally change it around and then and make it their own and make it a hit, right? Because now they do it. Now you'll hear, particularly in kind of the really contemporary music, you'll hear rappers kind of pull a piece of a song out.
I don't think they were the first to ever do that.
Who did it?
I'm gonna guess that there's a whole bunch of folks maybe down in Motown who may say that some other folks took some of our music and did something somewhat similar to that. Well, and not only do they do it, but they kind of left us in the dust on the royalties piece of it.
Well, I'm talking. This is the one song. This is the one. Right. That's a separate issue. This is one song that they just took it and
owned it.
And owned it.
Yeah.
And they didn't steal it. They said, they bought the rights.
Oh,
I'm
sure they paid Bruce something. Oh yeah.
And he's still
savvy.
Paid for it,
I think he's doing all right. Yeah, he's doing all right.
And Ray's like, well, what do you mean? And I go, I go, they from Springsteen. And he's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean? I go, it was Springsteen's song originally. He goes, no, it wasn't. He goes, what song? I go, Blinded by the Light. Greetings from Asbury Park, his debut album. And he's like, I don't think I've ever heard that.
And this is when I came into the room.
That's when
it was like an earthquake.
Yeah.
An earthquake, right? Drohan was so over the top about, wait a minute.
What?
There's a little musical nugget in there
something you
that
don't
I
know.
might be first to on this, and I was as equally shocked as you were.
I think he was just making me feel good.
Because
it was my birthday.
I think he was too. I think he's throwing you a bone. That's what they do every once in a while. Let me make John feel like he's got to pull me a fast one here, but I'm going to go with the Springsteen version. We can debate the whole other show.
There's no debate.
Yeah, no question.
I like the Manfred Mann version.
Yeah.
I think it's cool. I think it's a great song. It's probably the first one I remember as a kid,
sure.
That you heard kind of on the radio. But the Springsteen version is better.
And about that, the Springsteen version live. Sit down, and get your hair blown back.
All the
unbelievable.
Springsteen live
anything.
Better,
Springsteen, everything is live. That guy. That guy makes Raisin Bran in the morning. It must be an unbelievable
That's
production.
right.
To see him sliding across the floor, 3 hours to make a bowl of Raisin Bran, and you're entertained the entire time. I mean,
There's
that guy.
a raisin on the end of my spoon.
Yeah, that guy could make toast. You'd be watching the
Say
whole
what
thing.
you want
Like,
about
this is unbelievable.
Springsteen, like you can't deny it. Like he is, and not for nothing. I mean, for his longevity. So there's a lot of bands that have had some serious longevity.
Sure.
Nobody likes Springsteen.
No.
Nobody likes because we were talking about that as well. Like Springsteen, his concerts were 3 hours long, and they still are.
Well, and here's the other thing: they've been 3 hours forever.
Forever.
Right? I mean, that's his thing, right? His thing is. That's the whole
Dig
story.
in.
That's right. Dig in. This is going to be a rock and roll revival, and we're going to go to church. And it's going to be 3+ hours of going to church. And his catalog, obviously, being ridiculously deep. And let's see, how do I pick songs to fill the time? Right. Well, I got to do a 3-hour show so I can play like 10% of my songs because I get so many awesome songs. I mean, how could you not?
And then when Manfred Mann decided, I mean, little did we know this, right? When Manfred Mann decided, I'm going to record one of your songs, Bruce. I'm going to do one of your songs, and he's like, okay, watch this. Springsteen's going to do one of someone else's song, and he's like, watch this. Oh wow, you like my song better? You like my version better? Of course I do.
Sure.
Right? Anything Springsteen does, again.
Yeah, anything. Guy's a legend. And by the way, anytime you want to come on the show, Bruce, we'd love to have you. My aunt had a brush with greatness with Bruce Springsteen. So long story short, as we've mentioned on the show before, my dad was good friends with Harry Chapin. Harry Chapin put the arm on Springsteen at a concert one time to help out because Harry was always advocating for artists using their voice to do good. And so after Harry died and he was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal of Honor, my aunt went down to the show and they had all these artists come out and sing all these Harry Chapin songs. And my aunt's standing on the elevator waiting to go down to see the show begin. And who wanders onto the elevator?
The
elevator
boss.
doors open up,
boss.
and in walks the boss,
I'm
right?
not kidding.
And he stands there, and my aunt says, I said, what'd you say to him? She goes, what'd I say to him? What am I going to say to Bruce Springsteen? I said, that's what she said to him. I said,
Start whistling a song. Start
Excellent.
whistling Jungle Land.
Yeah. Hey, I love your stuff. Good stuff.
He probably never hears that.
Yep. Congratulations on your success.
Yeah, you're really good.
Yeah. She said, just being in the.
Do you really play the guitar, or you just fake it?
She said, just being in the elevator.
Yeah.
Just breathing the same air.
That's
We're
right.
at its weight in gold. So there you go. Brush with greatness. Good stuff.
I have to say though that's the whole like Harry Chapin connection with your dad.
Oh, yeah.
And so when was that? What year was that? Did he get that?
So my old man met him when he was first coming up.
So it's probably, I was going to say, young Springsteen.
Oh, well, no, the spring when they did the show, that was so post Harry died in early '80s, so that was probably
So
mid-'80s.
he was in his Born to Run heyday.
Yeah, he was famous. Yeah, he was pretty popular at that point.
Born in the USA heyday.
Yeah. I mean, he was recognizable, right? He wasn't. It wasn't 1974 Springsteen. It was it was 1980 something Springsteen, right? So it was glory days and.
And
and
just to review, your dad met Harry Chapin when? So
my dad met Harry Chapin in the early '70s when he was first coming up. They bumped into him at a small club on Route 1, and that began the friendship. They invited him. They literally at the end of the show said, "We love your stuff. Why don't you come back to the house?" Right? Of course, why wouldn't you invite some random stranger you saw at a club playing something? Come on, back to the house.
1. Yeah.
And he says, "I can't make it tonight because I got to go to another show, but I'll be back.
Oh yeah.
When I come back, let me know. Get on the mailing list, right?
Yeah.
There's no internet, right? Get on the mailing list, right?
Send me a letter.
Get a flyer in the mail that says, Harry Chapin is coming back to town. He comes back to town after the show. Hey, remember last time we met you? You got to come back to the house?
Yeah.
Come back to the house, right? Yeah, sure. Why not? Right? Back to Charlestown they go, and then off and running from there. The rest is family history.
Yeah,
it's not
right.
history. Family history.
It's good history.
It's good history. It's good history. What are you talking about today?
I wanted to talk about my birthday party. I want to just
quickly.
Very quickly. I had it. There was a birthday party. It was somewhat of a surprise to me, and I was very happy that my co-host was there. It was like my softball team was. Of course, we talk about my softball team. Jay knows several people on my softball team, a couple other people in town, but it was somewhat of a surprise. But it was great to see my co-host there. And the funny thing about it is that in the previous show, he had made he knew about this.
Oh my God.
He knew about it, and he was able to keep a lid on it. And I had even mentioned I wanted because Jay too is having a significant birthday this year, but I wanted to talk about mine because mine was coming up, right?
It's about you, sure.
That's right. So, but it was coming. So I wanted.
Your favorite topic.
I mentioned. I was like, it's a big year for you, and I wanted to swing it back to me. But you were like, no. Yeah, it's a big year for me. Let's talk about something else.
Was not getting on. Yeah,
Well
wasn't even entertaining that.
Well done.
Because
deflected.
I thought to myself,
Well
if somebody's going to drop the ball on this surprise
It
and
ain't
have to
gonna be me.
deal with your wife in terms of who dropped the ball, It was not going to be this guy.
That was good.
Wasn't going to be this
guy.
guy.
Well done.
So good party. Very nice to see everybody. Happy birthday again to
I'll show you the picture of all the
and-
Tullamore dew that I have that we have to get rid of. Yeah.
Why don't you bring some of that in here? We'll work on that. Yeah, yeah. You can bring that. You know what? Bring that by the office. I'll put it in my new decanter.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah,
Not a
great
bad
idea.
idea. Not a
Great
bad
idea.
idea.
Don't touch unless you do a radio show. So I'll put right in the front of it. So
All right.
that'll be it.
So today, what I would like to talk about
Please,
is I would like
please.
to talk
It's your birthday. Go
about
ahead.
in-home care. In-home care, and we, like last week's our topic of hospice, which is very kind of a sullen topic, which I think we kind of covered relatively well. This we're going to talk about kind of not the hospice. Not that far along, but but the idea of but the idea of in-home care, and it's a great topic to talk about because as people kind of enter in the latter stages of their lives and they get to the point where they can't do it on their own, and this is a very common thing that you talk about all the time in elder law. It's like they get to the point where they need help, they need some kind of assistance, and it's not like, and we say this all the time, it's not like one day I can do something and the next day I'm going to a full-blown nursing home. There's a whole lot of in-between options, and usually one of the most popular options and one of the easiest and one of the most satisfying options for the patient or for the person is to have someone come into their house and take them. And it also could be the cheapest or the most economical way to do it is that in-home care piece. And because the main thing is it allows people to stay home,
That's the game.
and you get to stay in your house and right now we're fortunate is that we're young and we're not like in that situation, but someday we could find ourselves in a place where it's like, hey, Dad, you can't stay here by yourself anymore for whatever reason.
That's what happens.
Yeah, you can't do it, and you got two choices. You can either leave and go somewhere where people are there to help you, or you can go, you can move in with one of your kids or something like that, or you can stay in your house, which, oh, by the way, it's your house.
Right.
And for me, I would probably want to opt to stay in my house. So I want to talk about that whole, how does in-home care work, and what are some of the nuances of it, because particularly with if you're gonna if your option is to possibly go to assisted living or something like that, there's ways to pay for in-home care that people may not be aware of.
All right, well, fantastic. We'll
what did you want to talk about?
That works. That works for me. That works for me. I have some background in that area. That works. And we'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk about home care, and we'll get into the details.
I gotta go take my Geritol anyway.
Nice. Geritol. They still sell that. That's still a thing.
I'm taking it. Why not? Yeah.
All right. Not a sponsor, by the way. Not a sponsor.
Yeah.
This is Money in the Law.
Not a company anymore.
Not a company. Yeah, not available in this country anymore. This is Jay Marsden, Money in the Law, John Drohan, Main Effort Financial, Marsden Law Group. You're here with WMRC. Listen to us on dailynews.com. MyFM 101.3. We'll be back in 2 seconds.
And we're back here on MyFM 101.3 with Money in the Law. No, you take us out.
Beat me to it.
I bring us back.
I bring
us back. All right. So thank you for staying. Thank you for staying with us and enjoying our show and sharing this wonderful Saturday morning with us. We're also joined, of course, by Christian from the Holliston Cable Access TV. Thank you, Holliston Cable Access TV, for putting our lovely, very young faces on TV. A lot of people come up to me and say, "Are you old enough to be on TV?" And I say, "Believe it or not,
TV makes you look so much younger."
Believe it or not, I am. Believe it or not, I'm was able to meet that minimum.
That's Lisa's
criteria.
work. Lisa does that. Airbrushes a lot of stuff in for you.
It's amazing what they can do.
Yeah,
it's amazing what they can do.
Film version of Just for Men. They're just brushing that in there, so you look like a,
That's right. They spray on hair.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Rub off some of these wrinkles. It's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Take some of the red out of my eye.
That's right. Well, that's the Tullamore dew speaking.
It's hard to do.
So we're talking home care. So this is, when you talk about care options for people, I try to talk to clients and say, look, because everybody worries about things in all kinds of crazy orders, right? They come in and they start worrying about, where's my mother going? Where's my father going? What about the money? What about the house? What about my brother? What about my sister who doesn't do anything for us? And I always tell everybody, stop, take a deep breath, and I say, look, this entire plan of taking care of somebody is driven by mom or dad's health.
Right.
Okay? That's what drives the bus. And you mentioned it before, right? There's other steps. It's not just home one day playing golf and nursing home the next day. Sometimes it is, right? But not usually.
Those
right?
are extreme situations.
That's right. There's a care continuum built in there, right? And the starting point is you're at home. And the discussion is, I always tell people, look, this is how it works. We have to think about what type of care, if you will, does your parent or your loved one, husband, wife, mom, dad, whatever, what kind of care do they need? And then we ask the second question, how are they going to pay for that?
Yeah.
Right? That's the answer. But the goal is, we're not talking nursing home, we're not talking assisted living, we're talking about what I explain as trying to keep somebody in the most independent setting we can keep them in, which is their house, right?
Yeah.
Because we've talked about it before in the show. Where do you want to be when you're sick? You want to be on your couch, under your blanket, with your clicker,
sharing a room with somebody.
watching Law and Order, because that's what's on all day long. Take any version. It's all day long. That's what's on.
On a channel, right.
That's right. That's right. That sound comes on, and everyone's like, that's Law and Order.
Yeah.
You know that sound better than you know your own kid's voice, right? That's Law and Order. Law and Order's on.
Maybe maybe in the Suffolk Law alum, maybe they do, but I don't know if everybody. But
most people.
Most of the cool people.
Yeah, that's right.
But you're right. So yeah, you want to be home. You want to be home, and so it's the idea of like So I'll ask you the question. So if somebody needs care, probably the first place they're going to look is where? Like because you say, well, how much is it going to cost? Well, let's say they have children. Let's say they have a spouse.
Yeah.
Right. So if somebody needs care, this is usually like the point of time where the spouse or the collective family can't do it on their own, right?
Right. But you're right. That's the first starting point. The first starting point is, hey, I got to go by and help out my mother. I got to go by and help out my father, right? And it's a pop over to make sure that everything's okay.
Yeah, because that costs nothing, right?
That's right.
That costs the least amount of money.
You're going anyway for the most part, hopefully, right?
Yeah. You're going anyway.
Yeah, hopefully.
I'm going anyway just to, I got to get some of the change out of Dad's car. No.
Yeah, you're not going with the expectation that they write you a check, right? You're going because you're taking care of, or if it's a spouse, you're there, right? You're taking care of each other, right? When you're sick, who comes in, right? Dr. Mom comes in. She takes care of you. Did you take these? Did you do this? They take care of you, right? If you had surgery and you were 35, 40 years old, or old like you at 50, if they go home, and you need help, your spouse, your family, they're going to help you out, right? They're going to help you get around. They're going to help you. They're going to help you, move around and feed you and make sure that you're taken care of. That's what they're going to do. So home health aides or home health care is basically contracting that concept out, because either there's nobody on the ground to do it, or the care is just too much.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
Or you just don't have the time. I mean, and that's the other thing, right? You have there's logistical, situation you could find yourself in, right? Or just plain old distance, like administrative, where people they don't have the if I have 3 children and let's say they live in different parts of the state or different parts of the country, then it's difficult for them to do that and let's say my health has kind of gotten to the point where now I need full-time care. I need somebody to help me out every day. In some way, shape, or form, I need help every day. And if my wife can't do it because maybe she still works, or maybe because she's kind of limited in what her capacity is.
She's got some frailty issues, right? She's when you're 85 years old and you're trying to take care of another 85-year-old, you don't have a lot of gas in the tank anymore, right?
Right.
It's hard.
Yeah, and it may be you may have to help them move them or things like that, and then it gets dangerous too, right? So then so if you have like you said, if you have an 85-year-old person helping another 85-year-old person, and somebody falls, you could have 2 people down. You have 2 casualties at that point.
Well, you could. I mean, people. We talk about this all the time. I mean, and if somebody's hurt, or if somebody's on rehab, or they have knee replacement, or they're older and they're frail. And somebody says, look, I need some help doing something. The thing that we talk about all the time is the extreme example we use is sort of in and around the bathroom, right? Yeah. You're trying to help somebody in the bathroom, whether it's take a shower or do something in the bathroom. There's not a lot of room in there, right? And if somebody's, older and they have their own health challenges and they're trying to help somebody else, there's a frailty factor there. And to your point, somebody goes down. An 85-year-old falls on top of another 85-year-old, and you got 150 falling on 85. Yeah. There's some broken bones. There's some real damage in there, and that really sets off, this sort of spiraling downward of people's health issues. So just like at some point, for example, again, your advanced age of 50, at some point you're going to say, look, I'm not climbing up on the roof anymore, all right? I don't clean the gutters anymore. Why? Because I'm not 25.
With my roof rake.
That's right. That's right. And at some point you say, I'm not shoveling the driveway. Why? Because you know what? Because shoveling the driveway at 40 or 50 has a different impact than it did at 20, right, when you were bulletproof. So at each stage of our lives, we start to kind of contract some of these things out. And at some point, the contracting out of the home health care issue is part of that process, unfortunately, but it's part of the process.
Right. So with us, it started last week. We contracted some people to come in to help us, to help me, just to help me to kind of figure out where I need to be, like maybe like a scheduling, and of course the bathroom. And
But that's a real issue. It's a real issue.
It is a real issue.
So you can do it a couple of ways. So one of the ways that you usually see happen is you private pay, right? So we're not talking about applying for benefits. We're not talking about pulling the trigger on an insurance policy or things like that. You private pay, right? You would reach out, you pick up the phone, and you call a home health agency, and you say, look, we need to make some arrangements for my spouse, my parents, whatever it looks like. And they're going to send somebody out. They don't just say, oh, great, what do you want, right? They don't. What they'll do is they'll send somebody out to do an assessment of your loved one. And that person is either a nurse or a nurse practitioner or, somebody obviously
knows what they're doing.
That's right. And they're going to say, okay, so what are we doing here, right? What's the game plan? What's this care plan going to look like? And then that, in many cases, will drive how many hours a day that they recommend that somebody come out and help out with the care, right? And you guys can control that. I mean, it's not just a case of, all right, we're going to do it 8 hours a day and it's 8 hours a day, right? To your point from earlier.
Yeah.
If you are going to fill in some of that, then it's a case of, look, I'm not around in the mornings because I have to go to work. So I need somebody here to do X.
Yeah. And like you said, it's a plan, right? You're gonna have a plan. There's gonna be, at this part of the day, we need to make sure that the person needs to take medication, right?
That's
then you
right.
may need help with that. Or this part of the day, they need help cooking food or like to eat, right? So your person may come in, and then like you said, maybe on the ends of the day, that's when family members can come in. But it becomes like these. Usually the home health care, they're kind of inserted as kind of part of this overall plan. And then it isn't unless there's a more serious situation where, let's say, somebody needs like kind of 24, like if there's like an Alzheimer's or some type of kind of dementia issue where they have to be watched all the time,
right.
Then it becomes different. That's a lot, and that's when you mentioned before, you're not you're private paying this. You're kind of paying this out of there. You're like paying to have them help you, but if you are fortunate enough and you have kind of a long-term care disability or a long-term care policy, you may be required to kind of say, okay, we need more care. We need more than just kind of the people coming in like every now and again. We need maybe a 12-hour person or
right.
a 14-hour person to be able to watch, so the spouse can go to work or things like that. And that's where you may have to kind of pull the trigger on if you have something like that, because that's going to cost more.
That's right.
Now you're getting into the costs that are similar to or could be close to some type of assisted living. And again, that's just because, again, more care is going to require more cost.
Well, and from a business perspective, think about it this way, right? So the home health agencies, as you might imagine, they don't want to send somebody to your house for 20 minutes, right?
No.
It just doesn't. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. So they usually do it. They try to do it in blocks, obviously, right? So they're going to try to say, look, we'll send somebody over there, and they may have a minimum. They may have a 2-hour minimum. They may have a 3-hour minimum. They may have a 1-hour minimum. But they're going to try to say, look, if we send somebody over here in the morning, it's 2 hours. It's usually the ballpark range for these things is about $25 a pop, right? So they're going to send somebody in the morning, and so you mentioned a plan, and you've mentioned a plan on every aspect of the planning that you guys do for people. Is we have a financial plan, we have a retirement plan. We use your money with a purpose, right? This is absolutely that scenario, right? Which is the idea of saying, look, this is what we need, right? It's not about put the money aside for a second. What type of care does my loved one need? Do they need help getting their day started, right? Yeah. And that doesn't sound like a big deal. Like you're like, oh, big deal, getting their day started. Well, think about how, just to yourself as you're driving along, listening to this in the car, think about what you did today, right? Think about what was involved in getting up to get your day going, right? It doesn't sound like it's a big deal,
right?
But if you had an injury that made it difficult to do something like that, then you'd realize, I need some help, right?
We've all been there. We've all had something where, like whether it be because you're sick or whether it be because, like you said, or you're injured, and then it's like, oh my God, it's like, it's so much harder. So if you're in a position where that happens, that you're like that every day just because of your advanced age or your medical condition, then it ain't easy.
That's right.
It's not easy. And I liked your point about, well, you kind of, you have to understand, like the home health care people, they're going to come in and they're going to help you evaluate this situation. Because because that's the other thing. People start thinking money, right? They think, well, now I get this a new cost, and of course it's just instinctive. I'm not going to just overpay for something if I don't feel like I need it, but you may think you don't need it, but you need it. When you say, oh, no, I'll be able to come in and get my dad going in the morning, and you think you'll be able to do that when that takes maybe 90 minutes of time and you have 15 minutes of time.
That's right.
And you think, oh, yeah, I can do it. And you just kind of, you kind of wing it, and you leave your in this case, in this example, your father in a position where they're vulnerable because they don't, you haven't given them all the care. You haven't set them up for success. You haven't, maybe you haven't taken them to the bathroom. Maybe they need to go to take a shower in the morning and in the evening just because they feel better, right?
That's right.
And they're happier and they're more comfortable, or just in case they have whatever the
or maybe
reason.
They physically really do need to take a shower in the morning because they have some other medical issues going on that make that shower mandatory. Now, again, to use your example, I think it's spot on. When somebody does the old, I get to zip over to my mother's for 15 minutes or my father's for 15 minutes to help her start the day, and it doesn't take 15 minutes, it takes an hour.
Yeah.
Now you're taking what's already a ridiculously stressful situation and you're making it 10 times more stressful, right? Because now what's happening? You're standing there in the living room, tapping your watch, right? Telling your mom to move it because you got a meeting at 9 o'clock and you got to jump in traffic and play that game, right? And mom's basically saying, I'm just trying to get my slippers on, right? And unfortunately for mom, that takes 20 minutes, right? So now all of a sudden, talk about a tension-filled situation just ripe for explosion. That's it right there, right?
Yeah, and then you leave, right? Or in the example, and then they're compromised. They could have rushed to do something. They may have forgotten to do something. You may have forgotten to do something.
Yeah.
And that's, at the end of the day, back to the original, the whole reason for this is because your mom and dad, they need help. They need care. There's a reason that they're in this situation, because they need help.
That's right. And by the way, it's a recipe for disaster, because to your point, somebody realizes they forgot something, they're going to potentially go try and do something that they shouldn't be doing. That's the whole reason you came there in the first place, and it doesn't work, right? It blows up, there's an accident, something happens. That's part of that problem.
Yeah. And I'm sure that a home health care service, as long as they're a reputable, good service, they're going to tell you, this is what you need, this is what here you can, we can help you with this. We can also help you with, we can help you with A, B, and C, but we can also help you with D, E, and F.
Right.
But that's of course going to cost more. You may be able to do it, but here's what it's going to take to do that.
Right.
And they can kind of help you, because again, this is what they do for a living. They do this with this is their wheelhouse. So, where oftentimes people, like family members, come into this and it's their first time around. It's their first go round on having to do this. And even if let's say, like in the case of my dad, my mom took care of my dad for many years, as he kind of his health started to fail as he got older. She was a huge part of his care. So she knew it. Like she knew how to do it, but she also knew her limitations.
Right.
And she also, and she didn't know her limitations in some respect too. So later on, he was, he needed her like all the time.
Right.
And that was the equivalent of all of her time. So, and she was perfectly healthy and she could kind of go out, so that limited her, and you have to kind of think of the other person as well. Like say, well, you need to be able to get out, you need to be able to take a break, you need to be able to kind of unwind, you need to be able to kind of do things for yourself, because if not, then your health could fall. Your psychological, your emotional health, but also your physical health could also be affected by this, and then you're in trouble.
And one of the things that you can do is you can use a home health agency to do the daily care and supplement the care that you are doing, right? And that's part of that initial discussion. When you sit down and the home health agency is going to say, or the agency is going to say, okay, what are we trying to accomplish here, right? And you're going to say, well, if you can help me, right, get him up in the morning or get her up in the morning and get them either showered or medications or get them ready. If you can do that, I can do other things. I can do, and when we were dealing with, with my mom and dad, my sisters and I tried to set it up so that we left my mom, or tried to get it so that my mom would do the stuff that we know that she would enjoy doing, right?
Yeah.
Like, making him breakfast, And there was some other sort of, things that we felt like, that's what my mother wants to do, right? That's the stuff that she sort of...
She knows how to do. That's
and it's the stuff that she should be doing. It's the right stuff for her, right? It's that, husband and wife thing, she can make them breakfast and she can, help get them dressed and things like that. But there was other stuff that we did that we said, we'll take on this. And that's what you're going to do. When you have a home health agency come in, they're going to say, well, we can do these things. So, and now that your time has freed up, then go do them. Now, by the way, that doesn't mean that you watching the home health aide and standing there and lording over them, that's not helping the situation, right? They're there to help. So to your point, use that time productively. And that means either go out for a walk or get out of the house or go take a nap or go read a book or go do something, but make use of that. It goes back to this idea of we don't all need to be doing everything together because then all the batteries run down together and that doesn't help us out, right? So use this time more effectively and use them the right way. And to your point, don't be afraid, don't be afraid to think it through and say, well, this is what we need to do, because they're going to tell you all that stuff that you haven't thought about because they do it all the time.
Yeah.
This is what they do. They can size up your situation relatively quickly and say, well, you think it takes us 6 minutes? It doesn't take 6 minutes. The whole getting dressed and getting ready in the morning, it's a 2-hour project, right?
Yeah,
well, if I can do it in 20 minutes, well...
And you may get better at it. I mean, it may speed up for you, but at the same time, it may not.
That's right.
So if you so for anything, that home health agency or home health care will kind of give you. They can kind of help you to you can kind of gauge as to kind of what the what the right way looks like is if you're struggling with kind of something new or something that you haven't been exposed to before. It also can kind of take you. It also can be you can also have some that kind of go the other way and say, well, you know what, maybe you're because the other part of this is the person who is getting the care, if they're not if they're having a bad experience with this, then you as the loved one, you can be like, okay, well, no, he kind and the good home health care, they'll say, okay, how does he like to do this, or how does he normally how does his routine? Because again, it's all about staying in the house. So staying in the house is all about trying to keep everything as normal and routine as it was before, without making too much of a big abrupt change.
That's right. That's right. And the thing that does come up, and I hear this a lot from clients, they say, look, my parents, my mother, my father, they're not going to let anybody in the house. They don't want a stranger in their house. That's always their story. That's always the way it goes. My mother doesn't want strangers around in the house, right? So there really needs to be
Except for Harry Chapin. When
that's different. He comes down, that's a different story.
Right. Bruce Springsteen comes to my house. Yeah. You're not a stranger.
Yeah, you're carrying a guitar? Come on in.
No,
come on in. Family jewels are upstairs.
Everybody, come on in,
Help
guys.
Yourself. Put it right in the guitar case. It's fantastic, right? So, but there needs to be a conversation with the people who are receiving the care to, unfortunately, try to have a conversation that's more diplomatic than I'm going to say it, but to basically say, look, it's my way or the highway, because if this doesn't work, then you can't be home.
We're leaving. Yeah.
You can't be home safe. So if you want to be in your home, if you want to be, again, as independent as we can have you be, this is a possible solution. Now, at the end of the day, it may not work, right? And people will ask me, well, how long is that going to go, Jay? How long is that going to work? And I'd say, well, it's going to work as long as it works. And they look at me like I get 10 heads, right? And they go, I don't understand what that means. That's like some type of, Confucian riddle. What do you mean it's going to work until it doesn't work? And I go, look, when it's not working anymore, you'll know, right? Something will happen, right? There'll be some, unfortunately, either the care needs go way up and there's nothing you can do about it, right? And then at some point you're trying to replicate the same services that somebody might get in a nursing home, and you have to make a decision. The decision is, are we going to continue to pay for that, or are we going to supplement that care ourselves?
And if you're smart, you've kind of discussed these possibilities in your plan, like in your when you first lay out, okay, we need in-home health care, and we say, okay, so we'll be able to do this up till this point, and we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and talk about that.
Great
so
idea.
as soon as we come back, we'll talk about that point of where we plan. Okay, if we get to here, then we have to make some other decisions. We'll be right back on My FM 101.3. Money and the Law.
Got it.
Money and the Law. Holliston Cable Access TV. Christian, who is kind of the overseer of money and law.
Who needs no home care at all right now.
Stay right where you are. We will be right back.
You're back. Money and the Law. My FM 101.3. Jay Marsden, the law side of the equation. John Drohan, Main Effort Financial, the money side of the equation. We're here with Christian from HCAT, and we're talking home health agencies, another exciting, riveting topic, more exciting than the previous hospice conversation. A little more
this
upbeat.
is right up there.
This is
right
equally as funny. Probably people holding their sides right now, rolling over in the aisle.
This
right?
is great.
This is
No,
hysterical.
listen to these guys.
Listen
No,
to this.
listen,
Turn
yeah.
it up. Turn it up. It's good stuff. But actually, it is good stuff because you know what? It comes up all the time. People say, "Look, where do we go with this? How does this work?" Right? And again, you're in uncharted territory in many cases when this happens. And if you've been through it once, then you have a sense of, okay, we were down this path before, and you kind of understand where it goes. If you're new to this equation, it's a foreign world. The conversations are different. The lingo is different. I mean, it has its own approach. Before the break, we were talking about the idea of sort of, I don't want to say floating the balloon, but we talked about talking about this as an option all the way through, right? And having a conversation. And I, when this conversation starts for families, I try to say to them, look, this is the glide path, right? This is what, if this works and we can do this for as long as we can do this, that's great. Home, where everybody wants to be.
Yep.
At some point, if this doesn't work anymore, the next step in the process is some type of assisted living arrangement. So, and I say it that way, and I tell people, look, let's not worry about that yet, but the goal right now is to focus on this plan right here, and that way at least you're telling somebody something, they hear it, but we don't have to worry about it just right now.
Yeah, it can be a double-edged sword too, because then if you say, if you kind of start, if you put that idea and say, okay, then it becomes. Then in everybody's mind, even though it is temporary, I mean, everything we do is essentially temporary, right? But then it's almost like, well, this is only happening for a finite amount of time when, as you said, we're going to do this for as long as it will allow us to do, right?
Yeah.
We are going to, in other words, you're going to stay home for as long as you can, and if the person who is kind of getting that is they're cerebrally, they're all playing with all their marbles, then they're going to be like, yeah, I want to stay home for as long as I can. And they're also going to say, they're also probably going to recognize, look, if I'm putting too much, stress on everybody else, I get it, right?
Yeah.
Like my father, he got it. Like he's like, look, I understand. Like this is, I'm a lot of work. Like I'm not. It's not a picnic with me. So he was kind of part of that. He was definitely part of that decision-making process as well.
But you bring up a great point. When we started the show talking about how your health drives the plan, right? So if the reason that somebody needs, home health aid or home health services is because of a physical limitation, then the conversation around why we're doing it this way and what the plan looks like.
Are they going to get better?
That's right. That's right. That conversation could be easier or it could be harder, right? Because somebody who's cognitively with it can say, look, yeah, I understand why the home health aid's coming in. I understand that they're helping me out, and they can wrap their head around what's going on. They may not love it, but they at least can kind of understand what's going on. Now, they can either embrace it, and they can be a good patient, if you will, and they can make it easy, or they're so cognitively with it that they're miserable, right? And that they hate everybody who walks through the door.
Yeah.
And there isn't a health aid on the planet that's worth their weight of, worth their salt.
Bruce Springsteen could come in as a home health aid.
Yeah, let me just help you out, and then I'm going to play some songs. I don't want that. Okay, great. I'll Springsteen give you a home concert.
Springsteen stinks. Yeah,
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Manfred Mann's "Blinded by the Light" was better than yours.
Yeah. When you left the E Street Band, I was done with you. Right?
Yeah,
I mean, somebody's that with it. That can be a challenge. It's not always a win. Now, the other side of that is if somebody needs help and they have some cognitive challenges, that can be easy because they might just be like, oh, yeah, so-and-so's here to help me out. Piece of cake, yeah. Help me. Or their cognitive challenges could make them either disruptive or it could make them subject to sort of a violent outburst. They could just be very difficult to deal with. And the home health aide is going to say, look, you know what? We can't do it, right? Yeah. And by the way, they're not obligated to be there, right? So, if you're creating a situation that is either tension-filled or where there's a ton of anxiety or there's a ton of anger or there's a real sort of a dysfunction, at some point the health agency is going to say, look, I appreciate it, but none of the aides want to come there because your loved one is they're disrespectful, they're demeaning, they yell a lot, they're insulting. At some point they're going to say, you know what, you're on your own.
And they're probably they probably have had plenty of experience with that anyway. So
God, yeah.
Yeah, so they know kind of what the limits are, and kind of what's normal or what's kind of like
that's right.
behavior that they're normally used to. But you get to that point where and that's where like when you kind of first lay this out and you say, okay, well, if someone's having cognitive issues, if they're having like dementia issues, and they need, because that's a lot more care. That potentially could be a lot more care than someone who has just physical limitations. Now you're like, okay, we want to keep them at home because they know home and they're better, and maybe their longer term will be better because they'll be calmer and happier and in a more comfortable or more recognizable place. But it could get to that point where they can't do it. Like there's just too much. There's too much of a demand, and the 24/7 is even, then it may be harder for the like the family, if they're living with a family member, because then it's like, I got somebody here all the time, and they may be like, look, I don't want somebody here 24/7.
Well, you bring up a great point, which is this idea of saying, look, if you come in, for example, and they do their initial evaluation and the home health, they'd say, look, what we think you need 10 hours a week, right? You need 2 hours a day, or you guys are going to handle the weekends. The family's kind of pulling together. Or it's 20 hours, right? We'll do 2 hours in the morning, we'll do 2 hours in the afternoon, and then you guys are on duty when you get home from work, and you're going to help mom out. There's that idea. And then to your point, you can change that. There can be a discussion that says, look, when we initially started this is what we thought we needed. And this is very, very natural, which is that you need to sort of tweak the plan, right? I mean, any plan you have, financial, retirement, there's going to be some tweaking in some way if it's not working, right? So this is one of those scenarios where you say, look, the 4 hours a day isn't getting it done, right? For whatever reason, my mother's still overwhelmed, my father's still overwhelmed, or they're not getting the care they need. So then there'll be a discussion that says, well, maybe we go to 6 hours. Maybe it's 2 hours in the morning. Maybe it's 2 hours at lunch. Maybe it's 2 hours at night. Maybe it's 3 in the morning, 3 at night. So, I mean, there'll be this discussion. Now, yes, every time that happens, everybody hears, a cash register, right? They're worried about the money and whether or not,
and rightfully so. I mean, it's because you could be financial. It could be it's a new bill. It's a new cost that you're adding into the mix that you otherwise didn't have before. So yeah, you're right.
Well, and not only and when I say worry about the money, I say people worry about it for different reasons. Some people, some family members, are going to worry about it and say, why are we even spending this? Right? That's a different dysfunction to deal with. But the other thing to think about is
dysfunction of greed.
if we have a certain amount of money on the table that we've allocated to this sort of home health project, if you think, or if you know, just from doing the math and sitting down with somebody like John, and you say, look, this is how long we think these dollars can last, you have to ask the question. You have to have the conversation that says, when this money runs out,
then what?
What's plan B?
Yeah.
Right? What's plan B? Now, plan B might be, plan A might be, we're not going to spend our cash limit is 4 hours a day, right? And we're going to be as effective as we can with that 4 hours because we know that money is going to last. Now, unfortunately, in many of these scenarios, the home health aid dollars, in a perfect world, they sort of tap out, if you will, at the time that somebody needs care that can be provided in a way that there's other means available to pay for something like that.
Sure.
And in many cases, that means a nursing home. Unfortunately, you mentioned, how long is this going to work? Well, this is going to work until their frailty or their medical needs reach the point where they have to go to a nursing home, and then if they become a Medicaid candidate at that point, that's, in some ways, from a financial perspective, that's the perfect situation, right? We took it as far as we could at home, and at the time that their needs got to the point where it made sense to go to a nursing home, their home care dollars ran out, and that was the end of it. That's the best case scenario. But you do have to have that conversation. I had a call from a client the other day. They had spent a ton of money on private home care, and we cautioned them all the way through on this that says, look, at some point, we may run out of these dollars. And they kind of took a bit of a cavalier approach to it and said, well, we're not all that worried about it. And of course, the minute the dollars ran out, the phone rang, and they said, we don't have any more money.
Yeah.
Now what do? I said, we don't do anything. There's nothing we can do. We talked about this. It doesn't sound like a big deal to have 3 hours instead of 4 or 4 hours instead of 3, but it made a difference. Over time, it adds up. And sometimes that transition can be a real challenge. Now, the transition might be, well, now you can't be alone anymore. Now it's live with somebody. Is it an assisted living? Are there other benefits out there? Some of the benefits we've talked about on the show that help pay for things like this. But you need to look a couple of moves ahead in something like this because you don't want to get caught flat-footed in the scenario.
Well, the financial piece, again, whenever you're the first, as we talked about in the beginning of the show, the first thing is what do they need? What is the health-wise? What do they need? And then then what is the best means to provide those to satisfy those health needs? And then the second question, which is a very important question, is how are we going to pay for it?
Yeah, where's the money going to come from?
Well, who's going to do it? What's the best way to do it? And then how are we going to pay for it? And then so this is unfortunately when you start talking about particularly elderly people who kind of are getting into that stage in their lives where they need help. And we alluded to it before that this probably is like, step one of several steps. It could be. So you may find yourself in a situation where, yep, we're going to do this for as long as we can, and then, we're going to have to go to we have a different option. We're not going to be able to stay at home. We're not, or we may end up to where we need a full-blown nursing home, or we may get to this point where it's going to cost more than, or it's going to take more than what we have to offer through a home health agency, as well as with the family members doing it. And that's the kind of planning at least from a financial standpoint. You don't know kind of when you're going to get there,
right.
But financially, I mean, this is your elder law planning. This is the elder law plan that if you were really smart, you've kind of thought about this beforehand, like well beforehand. Well before you kind of got to this point that you say, okay, should I get into a situation where I may need assistance? How am I going to fund that? How am I going to be able to pay for that? And because oftentimes, if somebody, especially if it's like a cognitive thing, they may get to a point where they're going to end up in a nursing home. They're going to they stay alive and they get full blown dementia. They're probably going to end up in a place where they need that level of care.
Well, and the way it was explained to me, where the light bulb went on, that this care piece, when you start out as an attorney, it's easy to talk about drafting documents and drafting wills and powers of attorney and things like that. The care piece is the elusive part. It's the hardest part to understand. And the best way, and you just touched on it, the best way it was ever explained to me, and the way I try to explain it to all of my clients, is to say it the way you said it, which was, look, we got to figure out what type of care, what type of services, what type of care does our loved one need, okay? And then part two is, and how are we going to pay for that, right? And then you go down all the options to pay for it, right? Option one is they get out the checkbook and they just write the check because they have the money, right? They write the check. And if they don't have the cash available, do they have a long-term care insurance policy? If they have a long-term care insurance policy, then let's tap into something like that. The other option is, we talk about the house, right?
Yeah, do they have other means of income? Yeah.
That's right. Do they want to get a reverse mortgage? Do they want to get a home equity line? Do they want to even consider using the house as an equity asset to help pay for something like this? And then if that's either unworkable or for some reason doesn't necessarily work out, then you say, well, what benefits might they be available for? Do they qualify for some state assistance that's available in their home? If they do, then let's look at those resources. Are they a veteran? Do they qualify for some of the veteran services that help pay for your care in the home or that care in an assisted living facility? And then the last stop on the train is the nursing home. And for the most part, that's a Medicaid situation. You can certainly privately pay, but if you don't want to write the $10,000 or $11,000 check a month, then it's the nursing home Medicaid application process that you're going to go down. And that's the care continuum, folks. That's it right there. It's what kind of care do I need and where are the resources going to come from to pay for it. They can come from yourself privately, they come from insurance policy, or they come from some of these other programs, but those programs are means tested and you might not necessarily qualify. Now, all of that being said, the most challenging situation are the gaps in all of those spaces, right?
That in-between spot, right?
That's right. I have too much income, but I don't have enough income to cover all the care, and I don't own a piece of property. Now what am I going to do? I will tell you that those situations are the most challenging. And if you're thinking through your own situation and you think you fall into that category, the best thing you can do is have a conversation with an advisor. Somebody like John's group can say, look, these are the things you need to think about, and we have some time. Let's get in front of it, have that conversation, and figure out what's my plan, right? Put a plan together and figure it out.
Because you're but in the perfect world, you've kind of had this. You've thought about this. You've thought about this enough to where you say, okay, I have. I'm. Most people are retired at this point, right? So I'm in my retirement. Okay, so if my retirement, if I live to age 110 and die on the front porch, that's great. Then I've won the game. oftentimes that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to get drawn out exactly like that. So in your plan, in your estate plan, these are the precise things that you talk about, because you say, oh yeah, well that's fine. You know, if I go into a nursing home, or if I need in-home care, then I'm just going to pay for it out of pocket. But let's say you pay for it out of pocket, you run out of cash, and all you have left is your house. And let's say you live alone because, you know, if let's say my wife, you know, I passed away and my wife lives in the house and all she has is the house. But in her mind, she was like, well, I always thought that the kids were going to get this house. I always thought I was going to leave this house to kids. Like, well, wait a minute. If you want to pay for in-home care, you're not going to qualify for Medicaid at that point. So someone's got to pay for it.
Yeah.
And if you haven't kind of done that planning beforehand, then you could kind of, you know, we talked about before in all of these kind of Medicaid situations, you could paint yourself into a corner where you're going to end up spending money that you may have otherwise didn't have to spend.
That's right.
Or
you may have had other plans for that money.
You may have been able to protect it. But we'll probably save that for next time.
Absolutely.
Which is a great transition to kind of review that, because it's not a bad thing to kind of keep reviewing.
It's very exciting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, most of you at home don't realize how exciting it actually is until you've actually listened to the show a couple times.
Well, because Sean's in such great shape. You can see it on TV. He's jumping up and down through the entire discussion. He's so excited. He's in such great shape, he's not even breathing hard. That's part of it's that army training.
And I am breathing hard.
That's right.
It is because of I think it's because I haven't really experienced enough fat loss.
I think it's because it's 5,000 degrees in the studio. But anyway, that's a different story. Different conversation. Conversation.
So next time we'll talk about kind of that. We'll readdress that idea of kind of what are some things I can do in order to kind of pre-position myself. So should I get to the point where I need some type of care, that I'll have resources potentially available to do that. That's a good
Fantastic.
Point.
I can't wait. Oh my God, let's do the show right now.
Nope, we got to go.
All right.
Unfortunately, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Great Blues Brothers quote.
Go, so we'll be back next week on Money in the Law with Jay Marsden and John Drohan, hopefully with Holliston Cable Access TV, and Christian here on My FM 101.3, the home of the Money in the Law on Saturday morning. See you next week.
Have a great week.
At 9 o'clock.
Go Pats.